One of the responsibilities I had as a newly ordained at St. Andrews was to do communion calls for people who were shut in or couldn't get out to go to church. So we would go and visit them and pray with them and give them the Eucharist. And I remember it was like a hot day in July, and I went to this house. It was a couple, and had a dog. I had 2 dogs. But I remember like walking into the house, and I just got whacked with this stench that I was like, oh my God. So I walked in, and they said like, hey Father, how you doing? I'm like, so we sat down and we were talking a little bit, and so they said, hopefully can you stay for like a tuna fish sandwich or something? And I'm like, gee, unfortunately, I got like a lot of communion calls to do. In fact, we're only going to be able to say half an hour, Father. So after thy kingdom come, I need to go. And you can finish the rest by yourself. Oh! And I remember like leaving there going, wow, it's just amazing to me. I'm telling you, I think the stench grew as I was there. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the smell was, but I was just amazed. I'm telling you, I couldn't breathe. And they were fine. They were walking around. You want a drink? Let's have a little tuna fish sandwich. Like, everything was fine. I was like, wow, it's just amazing. And I think about that, and I think like, and I guess that's like for all of us, right? When you think about something that's so familiar, certainly when you look at our homes, that's one thing too, but for the most part, when you really look at, that was so pronounced. But when you think of it, like we become so familiarized with the way we are, with the way we think, with the way we believe, with the way we see, that it doesn't even occur to us that this has been something that's developed over time. And we're all walking around like this perception, this way of looking at things, this belief, this attitude is the right one, right? And then anybody else who thinks any differently than us, they're wrong. So I was just thinking of that in terms of like that self-awareness. This family, they had no awareness of what it was like in that household. And I think like, like even ourselves, like when you think of like, what is our level of awareness? What is our level of awareness of ourselves? Like I asked you to like ask yourselves the question, am I aware of what's it like for everybody else in relationship to me? You ever see that where people like they'll interrupt, or you say like, oh, we were looking at this house and we were thinking of maybe buying it or whatever. Oh yeah, I remember when I had my house, blah, blah, blah. Like no one really stays in the other person's conversation that long. It's always kind of goes back to like a self-referral. Now in the gospel passage today, we see this guy who's very judgmental. He's like up there praying and he's like, thank God I'm not like that one over there. I'm superior, I'm better, I'm holier, I'm whatever, and look at this person over there. So it's very interesting how judgmental he was. And I thought, well, that might be an interesting thing. I mean, like it's kind of crazy to talk about that here, right? Because none of us are judgmental. We don't talk about other people. There's no gossip. There's no judgment. I mean, we just like love and accept, and everything's like wonderful. But what is that, right? I mean, if we really want to admit it, right? I mean, we can be judgmental. Now, is it human to be judgmental? Yes, it is. Is it good to be judgmental? No, it's not. And I always love that song by Josh Groban where he says, you raised me up to be more than I could be. And I think that's such a great thing when we think of becoming a good shepherd. It's like, what are we doing here? We're trying to raise ourselves up to be more than we could be. So do I want to feel bad if I'm judgmental, or if I notice I have a comment or an opinion about somebody? I don't want to feel bad about it, but I do want to be aware of it. I want to notice that, and I want to take a look and pause and ask myself, why am I doing that? What's going on there? Now, it's very, very interesting when you look at things in terms of psychology and projection. Very often, if I am judgmental or critical of you, what's really happening is I'm starting to notice that I am judgmental and critical of myself. So a lot of our opinions and thoughts about other people are a mirror about ourselves. Take a look at that when you're harsh or you're critical of someone, and stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's going on for me that I am critical or judgmental of that other person? And ask yourself the question, do I do that to myself? Life is like a mirror, you know? If I'm hard on other people, if I can allow other people to be who they are, there's a good chance I'm not allowing myself to be who I am. That I'm not having that sense of self-acceptance within myself. So I got to project that out and be good. I remember one time it was a sort of a friend of mine. It was like a training, and I was going to go to therapy for her. I wanted to work through something, and it was like 45 minutes, $90, and I went twice for an hour and a half. Now I'm in the middle of talking, and she's like, okay, your time is up, that's it, $180. I'm like, wow, well, I just wanted to say I was gonna, no, it's over. It's over. And I want payment now. So I was like, what a greedy, you know what? So greedy. God. You know what I mean? But when I look back at it, was she being greedy, or that was the agreement? It's a little bit of a business thing, and I can't do that. I'm not like that. Now, I'm not saying that's good to be like that, right? I mean, because I'll be like, we're going on and on. I mean, some people leave my office, it takes them 20 minutes to leave. So, in other words, my point is that I had to make her greedy and, and cold and uncaring. Why? Because if I didn't, I would have to take a look at my own way of being sometimes that I need to tune up. What do you think about that? When you think of your relationship, things that you say when you're judgmental or critical, well, me, other people. Is there anybody here who could say that they're never judgmental, they never gossip, they never say anything, you know what I mean? You ever see those people who say, we're going to go to the boardwalk and we're going to people watch? You ever hear that? What do you mean? What is this, entertainment? You're sitting there and you're watching people go by, and what are you doing? Oh, look at her. Could you believe what she's wearing? That is so funny. You ever hear that? We're going to people watch. We're going to go to the boardwalk and watch people watch. You need to get more things in your life. You know what I mean? But to be judgmental, to stop and ask yourself, what are you feeling the next time you hear yourself saying and talking about someone else on those rare occasions, or when you're judgmental or critical? Stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? How does what I'm saying have any relevance in the way I am toward myself? To look at that. We can be quick to judge or to draw conclusions, and yet we don't really know all of the facts. Stephen Covey years ago wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he talks about a paradigm shift. He's in the airport, and this kid is driving him nuts. driving him nuts, driving him nuts, driving him nuts. And he finally goes over to the father and says, hey, dude, your kid is driving me crazy. Can you do something about him? And the father says, oh, I'm sorry. We just came back from the hospital. His mom is like really sick. All of a sudden he was like, hey, buddy, you want some ice cream? He shifted the way he looked at it, the way he saw something. You know, so oftentimes when somebody's acting in a certain way, you know, there's a good line, see all irritating behavior as a cry for love. Sometimes the most annoying people in the world are really just looking to be loved. You know? So in other words, that's another thing too. When you're seeing a situation, you say, do I really, you know, not that we should even be judgmental, but do I have all the information? Do I understand it? What's going on? I can draw those conclusions. And then how do I feel when I'm doing it? You don't feel good. There's been shows where they show people who are very judgmental and critical. They have a lot of pain in their body. They don't feel good. You know that, like, when you think about, like, as a human being, what is that? You know, it's the history of humanity is a history of insanity. In the 1900s, 100 million human beings were murdered with the wars and things like that. Even I have a very good series, we should play it, narrated by Liam Nielsen, about the Pope, the most powerful man in history. Anybody see that? Excellent, excellent, about the history of the papacy. It's a history of insanity. Greed, corruption, murder, scandal, oh my God. Even the Crusades, let's go over and let's kill all these people because they believe differently than we do. In the name of Jesus. You know? And we could even think of it in terms of, in the church, in all throughout churches, how judgmental we can be. What are we doing? Right? I always say that. This isn't the Elks Club. This is a church of Jesus Christ. This is a church that calls us to rise up and to be loving and forgiving and understanding, which is another key thing to get out of being judgmental, is empathy. I love that, you know, like one of the biggest hallmarks of the quality of your life. What is your capacity for empathy? Are you able to enter into the world of another person and try to imagine? Empathy is not, I feel sorry for you. That's sympathy. Empathy is, what's it like being you? What's it like with what you're going through? To come out of ourselves and to enter into the world of the other person for empathy and compassion. So try that out. Like, you know, feelings are the hallmark of growing spiritually. You know, so Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. No, I am, therefore I think. And underneath all of that is this feeling. What makes you uniquely you is how you feel about something. You could say that you're married for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And there could be like a bunch of other people say the same thing. But how you feel about your partner, that says something uniquely about you. So your feelings are what is like your fingerprint. And if you're paying attention to what you're feeling, why am I being judgmental? Why am I being critical? Notice that I'm talking about this person. How am I feeling? You become self-aware. You become aware and you start to get more and more in touch with who you are and what's going on. When I was, going back when I was first ordained, I had a couple of weeks between St. Mary's in Dumont and St. Andrew's in Bayonne. So I went down to Florida. And so when I went down there, I was playing golf and I met these two guys who were born-again Christians. And you know, they have the whole Pentecostal thing down in Florida. And so we were talking, you know, like they were talking about the church. I go, oh, like I was just ordained a priest, you know, like 3 days ago. And they go, oh, have you ever considered becoming a Christian? And I'm like, didn't you just hear me? And I don't know, but being a Christian, you know, like, you know, and I was taken back because, like, I wasn't trying to say, well, I'm a priest, that proves I'm a Christian, but I guess, like, you know, however they heard that. But it made me stop and think about it, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, just because you're a priest doesn't mean that you're necessarily a Christian. Just because we come to church, like, all the time doesn't mean that we're a Christian. What makes us a Christian is that we're letting ourselves be loved and accepted by Jesus Christ.